Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Rouladen. That's right, we're going to stuff and roll beef just like a German grandmother would. Or at least this is how I think they would do it. I'm not actually friends with any German grandmothers. And believe me, that's not from lack of trying. But that aside, I consider this one of the greatest examples of German comfort food. And this is one of those classic dishes that really does look impressive and complicated to a guest. And yet, as you'll see, is incredibly simple to make. So let's go ahead and get started. And first up, let's meat the meat. So for this, you're going to need a couple thin pieces of beef. I would say a slice about 5 or 6 ounces would be ideal. I'm actually using some bottom round here, but similar cuts like rump roast or even chuck would also work. And by the way, if you have any seams or muscle separation like I have right here, you'll want to position that on the end you're going to start rolling from. And that'll make more sense in a few minutes, but I did want to point that out. And did I get this meat at a discount because it started to oxidize and wasn't all nice and bright red? I'd rather not say. And the first thing we're going to want to do is season this very generously with kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper. And once that's been accomplished, we are going to spread the surface of that meat with a generous amount of mustard. And I'm going to use some good old Dijon, but apparently you're supposed to use German mustard, whatever that is. But I'm pretty sure any mustard is going to do the trick here. So we'll go ahead and we'll smear both those pieces of meat with some kind of mustard, at which point we'll place down our bacon. So I'm going to put about 2 slices of thick cut bacon, and I'm actually going to break that piece off right there because I don't want to go all the way to the bottom. Okay, we want a little bit of plain beef to finish the rolling with, so we'll leave a couple inches at the bottom sans bacon. And by the way, if you enjoy the smokiness of bacon, this would be great for you. But if you don't, and want something possibly a little more authentic, you could use pancetta, which is pretty much the same thing, it's just not smoked. But anyway, we're going to place down our bacon, and then once that's set, we will sprinkle over a generous amount of paprika, or as I refer to it, training cayenne. And not only is that going to add a little touch of bittersweetness, it's also going to kind of stain that bacon red and help achieve what you'll see is a gorgeous color inside. And then once those have been paprika'd, we will add some thinly sliced onions, and we'll want to place them across this way, perpendicular to the direction we're going to roll these in. And again, just like the bacon, don't go all the way to the bottom. And then once our onion's down, we'll also lay down some slices of dill pickle. Exactly 3 pieces each, 1 at the top, 1 in the middle, and 1 near the bottom. And then once our pickles have been placed in perfect position, we are ready to roll these up. So we'll go from the larger end to the smaller end. And of course, do your best to keep everything inside. And we'll roll these nice and tight, continuing all the way to the end. So I'll go ahead and roll up my second one, in case you weren't clear. And then once our beef has been successfully stuffed and rolled up, we need to secure this somehow so it stays together. And I'm going to do that with 3 pieces of butcher twine, using that very simple knot I've showed you many times. Just slide the string under, twist it through at least 2 or 3 times, which will allow you to cinch it up nice and tight, and then we'll finish the knot, and that's it. And obviously you're doing this with the seam down, so we'll do 1 in the middle, and then 1 on either end, which should hold this together very securely. And I should mention a lot of people like to use toothpicks for this, but I find the toothpicks unsightly, dangerous, and generally annoying, so that's up to you. You are the Kaiser of these rolls, so you decide they both work, and then once those are tied and we've trimmed off our excess string, we'll go ahead and season the outside. And I hope a lot of you are thinking right now, why didn't you just season both sides of the meat when it was on the cutting board? Wouldn't that have been easier? Yes, it would have. I wish I thought of it. But anyway, we'll go ahead and season the outside, at which point it's time to brown these over medium-high heat in a little bit of vegetable oil in whatever pan or pot you're going to cook these in. So since I'm only making 2, I'm going to use this saucepan. But this recipe can totally be scaled up to as many as you want. You just have to increase the size of your cooking vessel, that's all. And when our beef has been properly browned, we will remove that from the pan, turn our heat down to medium-low, and make the gravy in which we're going to cook our rouladen. So like I said, turn your heat down to medium-low, and we will add a chunk of butter and some flour because we're going to make a roux. And yes, I definitely should have let that butter melt before adding the flour, but I'm impatient, and I tend to just throw it in, which makes it so much harder. But that's all right. Eventually the butter melted, and I was fine. And what we'll do is we'll cook that roux for just a minute, at which point we will dump in our cold beef broth or beef stock. And by the way, we can just go ahead and dump that all in at once. Remember, hot roux, cold liquid, no lumps. So just relax, all you lumpaphobes out there. You could just dump it all in at once, and then just whisk vigorously for a minute to combine. And once you feel like that's been incorporated, we will raise our heat to medium-high and bring this up to a simmer. And like all roux-based sauces, it's not going to thicken until it starts to bubble, which you can see happening right here. So as you can see, it's not a super thick mixture, but it definitely has some body to it. And at this point, we will transfer our rouladen back in, along with, of course, any accumulated juices. And then as far as the rest of this procedure goes, it's so easy. All we're going to do is reduce our heat to very low to maintain a very, very gentle simmer. And then all we need to do is cover that and let it simmer for about an hour and a half or until the meat's tender. And what you want to do a couple times during that hour and a half is uncover it and give them a turn. And by the way, that gravy level is perfect. They don't have to be covered. They're going to cook beautifully just like that. So like I said, once in a while we'll uncover it and give those a turn. And we'll simply keep cooking until, like I said, the meat is tender, which generally is going to take about an hour and a half, but of course it's going to depend on how big you made your rouladen. And of course you don't have to guess if it's done. You could just use a fork or the tip of a knife to give it a little test, and it should slide in fairly easily, which mine did. And then once our meat is tender, what we want to do is remove that tool bowl to rest for about 5 minutes or so while we finish off the gravy. And all I mean by that is turn the heat up to high and maybe reduce it just a little. It might be okay, but I did reduce mine for about 5 minutes just to thicken it up a little more. And obviously you're going to taste it for salt. And I didn't show it, but I did skim the fat off because I don't want my plate looking too greasy. And then once our sauce is set and our meat is rested about 5 minutes, we are ready to serve. And yes, you can serve it whole just like this, but for me it looks a little too, loggish. So I highly suggest you do what I'm about to do now. Give it one slice at about a 45-degree angle just like that to reveal one of the most gorgeous stuffed and rolled beef dishes in history. Look at that. Now that is some precise German engineering right there. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut that in half at an angle, and then we'll go ahead and serve that up. I did mine on some braised cabbage and roasted parsley potatoes. And then last but not least, do not forget to ladle over that amazing gravy. And that beef rouladen, or at least the Chef John version, is done. And as gorgeous as it looks, the taste and texture were just as impressive. And even though we use very tough, very lean beef for this, the fat in that bacon has provided an incredible richness, almost an artificial marbling, if you will, that really helps make this so moist and delicious. And of course, that gravy we stewed everything in is amazing. In fact, my only regret here was not making mashed potatoes, because that gravy was so incredible. So I did feel like a little bit of a Doomkopf, but I don't want to be too hard on myself, because all in all, this really was uber wunderbar. And by the way, if you're wondering where I learned all this German, from Hogan's Heroes, of course. But anyway, that's it. Beef rouladen. Like I said in the intro, it only looks complicated and impressive, but in fact is actually a very simple recipe. So I really do hope you give this a try. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.